Shalom, I'm Rabbi Jonathan Ginsburg of the Ezra Habanim Now's Township Jewish Congregation. This video is about the Torah portion, the last two portions in the book of Leviticus, Vayikra. The first is called Behar, and the second is called Behukotai. They're often read together. They're very short, relatively, and this is the case this year in 2007 when they'll be read together. Behar deals with several important ancient institutions. The first is Shemitah, which is that every seventh year there's a cessation of agricultural work in the land of Israel, and all debts are canceled. Now, in terms of the first, when you go to Israel, like next year will be a sabbatical year, there's usually not the greatest produce because there's many farmers in Israel that don't produce, especially the Orthodox kibbutzim. But when this institution was revived, when the Jews began returning to Israel, the chief rabbinate ruled that if you sell the land to a non-Jew, then the laws don't apply because it's owned by a non-Jew, and so you can plant, kind of a legal fiction, which is still practiced. But it was an early kind of soil conservation, very brilliant of the Torah, of course, thousands of years ago to come up with this, where the land would lie fallow for a year and be allowed to regenerate its nutrients. Also, there's a moral quality to this, which is to tell us that we don't own the land. The land is owned by God, and we just are users of it. The second part of that is the cessation of debt. Now, the Torah is concerned, of course, that people won't loan money in the sixth year if the debts are canceled in the seventh year. This was sort of an early form of bankruptcy protection to avoid people getting too deeply in debt. And the rabbis were worried that people wouldn't be able to borrow money when they needed it because of that. And so they instituted various rabbinic mechanisms to allow people to keep the spirit of the Torah, the letter of the Torah, and also the spirit of the Torah. But the idea was to help the poor. The second institution is the Sabbatical, Yovel, the Jubilee. These are the 7 sets of 7 years. And there's a lot of sevens in holiness in the Torah. Every 7 days is a Shabbat. 7 times 7 in the Omer period, of course, the sabbatical year every 7th year, and then after 7 cycles of that, you have the Jubilee in the 50th, when slaves were set free. These were indentured servitude, people who were basically working as indentured servants, and land reverted to its original owners, so people wouldn't be able to hold on to land forever. A very famous sentence from that passage about the Jubilee is now part of the Americana on the Liberty Bell: proclaim liberty throughout the land and to all its inhabitants thereof. And I want to speak about that very fundamental idea of Judaism. For example, think about it. In the whole Middle East, there's only one democracy, real democracy, that area, and that is Israel. It's inconceivable that a Jewish state would be set up that wasn't a democracy, because liberty and democracy have been the keystone values. The whole holiday of Passover is about redemption from slavery and bondage and being free. We pray every morning, thank God for making us free. The notion of freedom is so well ensconced in our tradition. Hanukkah is the story about a group of Jews who rebelled against the tyranny of Greece and wanted religious freedom and political freedom. And that indeed is one of the essential messages and stories of America, the idea of wanting to be free. In fact, if you think about the messianic image in the prophets, they talk about how everyone can sit under their own vine and fig tree and no one will make them afraid. And Maimonides, the great medieval rabbi, talking about that, says essentially there's no difference between this world and the messianic world except that people will be free, that Israel will not be subjugated by the nations. People will be free to worship God in our own way. And so we have freedom and democracy at the very heart of the Jewish idea for the world, and this comes from the proclaim liberty throughout the land, one of the essential verses. And finally, we have the Parsha Behukotai, which is a very interesting portion. It basically promises rewards for people and blessings for people that follow the Torah and curses for people that don't. And we've found over the course of time that individuals who live by the ideas of the Torah and the laws of the Torah have a much fuller spiritual life and a much fuller life and live at peace and conscience. Doesn't mean that everything will go well. In fact, there are great tragedies that happen to good people. We believe there's a reward in the world to come for the goodness and the punishments for the wicked. But essentially, the Torah is saying that God gave us God's ideas about the world and we should follow them. And so this is how we end the book of Leviticus. And of course, whenever we finish a book of the Torah, We say chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek. We should all be strengthened in the following of God's ways and growing in spirituality.